Man, did I have a ball talking to Eric Sherman, one of the principal founders of Specialized Engineering Solution, an engineering firm that specializes in healthcare industry. Eric is one of the funniest people I know. He's also one of the most successful business people I know. And it all starts when he got caught up on the roof as an 8 or 9-year-old in Ashland, Nebraska, and his babysitter had to call his mom and say, "Get on down." But it was that kind of risk-taking that has helped him to become a very successful entrepreneur. Starting with just 6 employees, now today with over 100 employees, and he's nationwide with his engineering firm. You're going to love this. He has so many lessons, from the empathy that he has with his employees to how working in the trades in 1994 made him a better engineer, and really focusing on the why. Why does he do what he do, and making sure that he can convey that to his employees. It was a blast. It was fun. We bounced off the walls. Enjoy this episode of Leadership Lessons from Mayberry. Well, I'm telling you, who knows where this is going to go. I'm with Eric Sherman today, the owner of Specialized Engineering Solutions. But we always start, Eric, and this is, again, when I say buckle in, let's buckle in here. We always start with what your Mayberry is. And your Mayberry is Ashland, Nebraska. That's where you grew up.
Yeah, Boyd Street.
Boyd Street. I got to hear about the days. What was it like? It was fun, riding your bikes around and looking for something to do. And, everything in my world was 2 blocks away. My best friend, Brett, was 2 blocks away. My mom worked 2 blocks away. And so, yeah, started that. Yeah, one of those towns where, there's a lot of good, but there's probably a few things you can do to find a little mischievous trouble, right?
A little bit.
Yeah. Any of those you care to share? Some of those fun days and, Well,
I know we had a babysitter one time, and we convinced her that Mom let us get on the roof all the time. So we were up running around on the roof of the house, and the neighbors were calling my mom at work, and it's not a great babysitter. Who believes that?
I was going to say, I guarantee you she was asking for double pay, having you and Adam, your brother.
Yeah. It was more containment. That's what I always say. There was active parenting, and then it was containment at some periods of time. Yeah.
You know what I love about that story is, having grown up in Ashland as well, I know how everyone kind of looks out for each other. Yeah. And here you got enough neighbors feeling comfortable to pick up the phone and call your mom at work and say, "Hey, got to get these boys down." Yeah. That probably had its advantages, but also its disadvantages. But talk about that sense of community in Ashland growing up.
Yeah. You never felt like, you always felt like there's people there for you, and the community did a great job. And, a lot of my first jobs, Lee Sapp at Lee Sapp Ford and Holden Smith with Gene and Judy. And you never were really looking for anything. You always had people there ready to help you out. And it was good. It was good. Yeah. Good experience.
Sports, I know, played a big role in your life.
Yeah.
You were a tough football player. You put your head in there. Talk about the influence that sports played, and maybe even some of those coaches you had growing up.
So I always tell my kids I was an average athlete at a below average athletic program. So when people say you're good, take that with a grain of salt. But probably most influential was Tom Anderson as a coach, and as I coached later, which I loved, and I probably learned just as much coaching kids as I did in business life. But the thing I loved about Tom was his philosophy, and that was we're going to be here for 2 hours, and we can run for 2 hours, or we could be really focused and do a lot of things in 2 hours. I love that as a coaching philosophy. He was very disciplined, which that team needed. And so, yeah.
You're talking about your football team.
Yeah,
Tommy went on, of course, to be a football player, or I should say before that, he played football at Iowa State.
Yeah. And then he was administrator, and he runs facilities now at Blair. So, yeah.
So you brought some of that, do you think, into your business world?
Absolutely.
What you learned from him?
Yeah. I think sports teaches leadership, and it teaches teamwork, and it teaches, I was under the misconception as a young athlete that it was about me, and the team isn't about you, right? It isn't about your personal success as a mediocre football player. It was about, winning games. And I learned that probably my senior year when I, got hurt and was on the line and did what I could, at that point. So,
you were a lineman?
Well, I started the season as running back, but ended as a lineman because I had some injuries on my leg, and so.
What was that transition like? I mean, look, as a ball carrier, you're up on, well, of course there was no Twitter back then, but you're up in lights, right? Everyone's saying he carried 10 times for 97 yards.
Yeah, nobody said that.
Then you go, that didn't hit the paper. Right?
Yeah. It was more like I think got six, maybe 6 yards.
Yeah, 6 carries for 6 yards. That's not bad. But then you go to this really unselfish role of being a lineman. I mean, was it a big transition, or was it easy for you?
Not really. I mean, at that point, I kind of matured again. I learned my sophomore year and stuff like that. I'd kind of learned that's more what it's about is the team and less about me. And so it was a good lesson. I think it's probably one of the best lessons I got from sports.
I was talking to Coach Thompson the other day, Coach Ryan Thompson of Ashland Greenwood, and he said, quarterback and lineman, O-lineman, 2 of the smartest position players on a football field. Did you feel that way?
Oh, yeah.
Did you? Or was it just, I'm going straight ahead and knocking them back?
We didn't have a complex offense.
Power eye.
I pulled sometimes and I blocked straight ahead. That was I think it. We were like 3 pass plays. It's not like we were doing, the run and gun.
It's a little amazing what they do today, isn't it? With spread offense.
Oh my gosh, it's night and day, and the athleticism and all of that. Yeah, totally different.
Well, I love hearing those stories of you growing up in Ashland, and you had so many. It sounds like an idyllic, childhood growing up, but you also had to deal with something that no kid wants to deal with. When you were 8, you lost your dad.
Yeah.
And very suddenly. And you've shared with me, this was, a big moment for you in teaching you so much about life. But first, let's start with just losing your father, and then, what you learned, and how it shaped you from that moment.
I mean, it sucked, right? That's a horrible thing. And my brother was a little bit older. He probably bared more of the brunt of that. And, you look back and all those cumulative things that occur in your life kind of make you who you are. And I would say most likely the biggest element there was just the independence. You didn't have somebody there to do things for you. And as great as my brother was and my mom was at being there, there still is, something you have to figure it out. So if, that shaped me. It also, you also pick up, if you do research on that trauma and stuff like that, you pick up, like I'm compulsive, like, so when I'm working, I'm compulsive about working. And when I'm doing a project at home, I'm compulsive. And, that's probably hard on my wife at times because my mind doesn't really slow down and that type of thing. But, she deals with it. She's great, patient.
Got an amazing wife.
She is, yes.
And kids, and we'll talk about them in a little bit too. One thing that obviously you saw as well, and you said, this is not always easy to talk about, but your mom, she stepped in, obviously had 2 boys to raise. And I mean, to tell you, what a role model and what a champion. She goes, she gets her degree. She ends up working 50 years at a bank. She gets on the board of directors. Talk about that influence and watching her work through all of this.
Yeah, I mean, nobody should outwork you. Like that's one of the things I tell my kids is, work ethic, and you should never, there's no excuse for getting outworked. And she's probably the biggest example of that for sure.
Yeah. And I imagine you take those lessons with you every day from what you learned from her.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And this was in a time too where women being on a bank board and that sort of thing. Kudos to Farmers and Merchants Bank of Ashland for moving her. Yeah, and a sponsor. Got to give that plug. Thank you. You saw it.
Dynamite drop in.
Yeah. But that had to even make you even more proud.
And happy for her.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
The other thing is, like, she never missed a sporting event. Adam and I were in a lot of things, and as the people from Ashland would know, like, we got into trouble a lot, and she had to deal with that. So, sorry,
After all these years, she finally hears sorry.
Yeah, she's probably like, my kids don't get in trouble. She's like, oh, really? Not an ounce of that you have to deal with.
For those people listening, wondering, trouble. Listen, I mean, you were ornery. You had spunk, but how much did that help you? I mean, that spunk and even getting into a few scrapes here and there. I got to imagine you pulled some lessons out of that as well.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, I guess I've never been super like risk adverse. I've always kind of I'll figure it out. Right. I'll figure it out. Oh, this one's going to be tough to figure out. But, that's just maybe a personality thing. And yeah, that's kind of what came from that. And I would say, Dave Lutton helped me out pro bono during that time.
The attorney in town.
Thanks. Dave. And again, the community did. I think they recognized and did a great job of stepping up and taking care of me. People at the bank, all the kind of the community leaders and a lot of people within the community were really, really good to us and our family.
Yeah, that's what I love about Ashland. Well, we're going to transition. And by the way, Eric, we're going to be all over the place.
Yeah.
I laugh and say
that's
I have
my style.
ADHD. You say you might have just a tinge of it. So we're going to bounce around.
Yeah.
You good with that? Mm-hmm. All right. Well, let's start off. I love it. You said to me, I graduated in 1994. Here's a guy. You have built an incredible business that we're going to talk about. But I love when you sent me this email. I graduated in 1994 from high school with no particular honors. So you kind of just got through, right?
Yeah.
But that's got to say,
could have worked harder.
Yeah, that's got to say to a lot of folks out there, it isn't what you do in high school, right, that defines you.
Yeah.
So did you have a sense in 1994 that the big things were up?
No.
Okay. No. What was your plan in 94? What were you thinking?
Grind through college.
Yeah.
I did recognize the fact that college was a really large financial obligation and that, you might as well get something out of it. And I had partied a ton in high school and I didn't as much in college. It was time to get a degree and get through it and grind through it. And I was definitely in engineering, man. I was like bottom third in terms of IQ and an ACT score and all that stuff. So it was tough. Like it was, and that's what I always tell engineering students today is it's a little bit about how smart you are, but it's really just how subject to pain, how much you can grind and you become a problem solver. And once you become a problem solver, then you start to get it and start to roll through. But it was really tough for me to get to that school.
And I interrupted you, but you had to have a moment where you thought, I'm going to stop?
Oh, yeah.
Did you?
Well, I never had a moment. I never had a moment where I didn't think I was going to do it.
Yeah.
Like, I hate that they do this. Like, at engineering school, they used to. You get in there and they'd say, look to your left, look to your right. One of you, only one of the three of you are going to be here. And I was like, well, sorry, guys.
Did you verbalize that?
I should have. They were like, I would have carried through the rest of school. But I never thought I wouldn't do it, but there were moments when I thought like I can't get this. I got to figure out how to get through this class because I literally can't understand this. And so, you try to really do good in other things because you just know that you're not going to figure that out, and so you get a B or whatever. And so
right.
Yeah.
So you fight through it. You go. You get through college.
By the way, nuclear engineering don't do that. You got to understand. We were just talking about this last night. Everything about that, right? Because if you mess up, you're in trouble.
There's a few ramifications in that.
Thoroughly understand nuclear engineering.
You better be 4.0.
Yeah.
So you don't go that route. But I love that you go mechanical engineering.
I'm mechanical.
Yeah.
Yep.
But here's the deal. In 1994, you start working in the trades, working on piping and sheet metal
with my stepdad.
and refrigeration.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So and your stepdad, Steve.
Yep.
Talk a little bit about how that helped you.
It was great because I understood kind of the fundamentals, how things got pieced together, it was something that, sometimes people that come out of engineering school go into consulting that never lived that don't understand kind of how the work site works and, how some of the actual components work. And so it definitely accelerated, my understanding of what I needed to do.
So it connected the dots in some ways for you?
Plus it was hot and it was crappy and it was on roofs and it was pulling compressors and it was cutting your hands and it was like, I was like, I don't want to do that the rest of my life, right? So it was reinforcement to stay in school.
I love it. Yeah. So you go from that, obviously you get your degree, you come out, you start getting into the business, obviously you're working for, a company, but then in 2005, something trips your trigger. I mean, you take that leap that so many entrepreneurs do. Walk me through what motivated you to say, I'm stepping out from a guaranteed payday to starting this endeavor
Yeah.
called Specialized Engineering Solutions.
This is gonna be an anticlimactic moment right here. I'm just.
There isn't some big thought bomb going on.
I had never ever wanted to do that. I always loved the thought that I could just drag up and go somewhere else. Right. That was a real freeing thought to me. And that if I was in ownership, like I was like, oh, I can never leave. But I was doing a job with my partner now, and I was like, we should just, it was kind of just like, we should just do our own thing. And he was like, yeah. And I was like, oh no. Like, what did I do?
You were hoping he'd say no.
now I've got to like work on this while I'm working on it. So that was really it. And it was about like, I had a history teacher, and I've never vetted this, but she always said that George Washington is very admirable, right? But he wasn't like super smart. He was just really great at getting the right people in the room and getting everybody's opinion. And so that was like, well, I just need a good team. Like, I don't have to be everything to this. I just need a really good team. And so, we just thought through what would that team look like, and launch with a really good team.
So you launch with 6 people, right?
Yeah.
And you and I were having a great conversation before we went on today about one of your key partners, and just how you guys have, you're both different in your leadership styles.
Yeah.
Was that again something that you're like, this is perfect, we can play off each other, or was it just like, again, as simple as say?
Yeah, it was kind of cool because we interned together. We engineered together. We had the same role kind of growing through it. So we were very comfortable with each other and kind of respected what each other did. Definitely he had a skill set that I didn't possess. Way better in
what way?
Business minded, very business minded, and just very organized and detailed and managerial and that type of thing. And there was me.
Yeah. No.
This guy.
No. You had those interpersonal skills. I would imagine the sales and marketing also probably flowed through you a little bit. Am I right on that? Yeah. And before we get too far ahead, this is where I say we're bouncing around. Everyone's got to know. Tell me about Specialized Engineering Solutions. What is it that you guys do?
So it's very technical.
Yeah.
You wouldn't understand.
just try it. I won't.
I don't even.
But they will. So
we're an engineering consulting firm. We specialize in healthcare engineering. So we work probably. I mean, we have a very huge breadth of what we do, but to boil it down, we design the components that build the hospitals for the most part.
Right.
We do they do labs and other healthcare related areas, but work a ton for the VA. So we design mechanical, electrical, telecommunications, fire protection, life safety, medical gas, everything except for the architecture and the structure that goes in hospital systems, and we do it all over the country.
So when you started this,
you totally understand.
Yeah, I get it.
Got it.
I could
join
read
this
blueprints now. So
that's all I needed.
You did a good job. There's that sales and marketing. So when you put it together, again, how strategic is it that this is where we want to go? I mean, did you know immediately this is the space we were going to be in? Did it take some talking?
That was my partner Tracy for sure. The discussion was, where we were at, we were designing all types of facilities. And I had amazing experiences. I got to work on the Memorial Stadium. I got to work on in Offutt and some that type of thing. Got to do really fun stuff. But we were also doing hospitals, and we felt like there was a niche just to do, just to really focus and concentrate on hospitals, because regulatory requirements for engineering of hospitals is kind of its own animal.
Yes, and you know what, that's the other part to it. Did that ever discourage you when you're like, look, I've got all these regulatory, this makes it even more complicated?
Job
or
security.
Did you feel like it was more niche?
Yeah. I mean, I understood them and got through them pretty quick, and again, I think the problem was, and the firm I was at was great, and the people were great, and I got a lot of exposure, and it really accelerated, me being a good engineer, and I still really love interacting with those people that I grew up with, in that part of my career with. But on the side of it moves kind of quickly. So if you do an emergency department and then 3 movie theaters and a stadium and then back to an emergency department, so much had changed in between. So you just stay current with everything that's going on. You're doing, we can do an MRI faster than a strip mall. That's kind of how we do it. So yeah.
So you start with 6. one office, and today, of course, you have over 100 employees. You have multiple locations throughout the country. But I want to back up a little bit and say, when did you know that this thing was going to be a hit? Where was that moment when you're like, look, I think we've got something here?
When you called me for a podcast.
It was just last week.
What?
Man,
I made it.
That's exactly right.
I'm here. I've arrived. I don't know that we've ever felt that way. We are competitive and we push and push and push and push. And there's been all these great things. Some of them luck, right? Some of them, rightly positioned. Some of them, most of them, all of them, really great clients and great experiences with clients. But we're just kind of here now, right? And we want to be here this year, and that's what we're focused on. And next year we're going to focus on where we need to be there. And so,
did you have like a 3 and 5 year where you said, "Hey,
yes.
Look, in 2 years, I want to be out multiple locations," and you had that kind of strategic plan?
Yeah. We more find markets that we think are good markets, and we move into those, and we don't force growth for the sake of growth. We force, we move into areas where we think that there's an interesting story about a tech company that sold to a larger tech company, and he talks about I think I read this in a book or maybe it was a podcast, but that his dad was teaching him how to play poker, and he tried to get really, 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 really good at playing poker. And what he found out was instead of getting good at playing poker, he should get really good at finding bad poker players and just play poker against bad poker. And I'm not saying there's bad engineers, but there's markets that are softer.
Right.
And so we focus a lot more on trying to not force our way into markets that are already loaded with really great consulting firms and markets that are emerging that don't have as solid of consulting basis. So
how did that evolve? So when you start out, I would imagine you had one little niche and then you're smiling. So tell me, where did you go? What was like the first additional market that you're like, hey, we can get into this?
Well, we were working all over the country from Omaha.
Right.
We were starting to pick up a lot in Denver, and it was a quality of life thing. So like I was running 30-hour days working in Denver. So you drive out there, you do your work because flights would always be messed up, and then you'd come back, but you had to be back for your stuff in Omaha. It got pretty rough. So so that market was opening. We had opportunity. That was the first logical market. Now, when we merged with a firm from that market, they actually had an office in Charlotte that was doing fantastic. So it kind of came with the deal, and then we started looking at that market, and then we became a little better at starting offices, places, and that type of thing. Yeah.
So are you more instinctive? I mean, does it take a long time to process? I believe this.
Yeah. So this is a huge lesson. I interrupted you.
No, you're good.
Horrible.
No, keep going on because
this is a lesson I learned because I try to be a careful communicator and patient, and I try to think of things as, how would you feel? How would this person feel if I was saying the same thing, right? Trying to put yourself in that. But what I learned was in an engineering firm, we did personality profiles, and the whole firm is here, and I'm over here. Like I'm not at all like the people that I'm working with. I am a quick start. I am. I don't take a lot of time to analyze things. I move into things. I kind of figure it out as I go. And almost all engineers are processors. They need time. They need to internalize. They need to weigh all the things. So yeah, that's definitely one of the things that my partner and I are very opposite personalities. And so I'm always looking at it from one point of view, and he's looking at it for the other. But we're completely aligned in philosophy and morals and ethics, that type of thing. And so that's what really I think brings us together.
That's what I wondered about. Yeah. I mean, you've got honestly a very when I say instinctive, you have that cells, right, personality, because you were like, hey, this is it. It feels good. My gut says this is where we should go. But then you've got a partner, right, who probably puts the yellow sign up and says, let's talk it through. How does that interaction, I imagine you guys, as well as you've done, this is built into a wonderful interaction where you trust each other.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, probably one of the best things is that he manages the business side of it. He manages the federal government work. He manages operations and stuff like that. I trust him implicitly to do that, so I don't spend much time. If there's something that I need to know, he'll bring me up to speed on it. And then the same thing with working with clients and trying to gain market and that type of thing. He just kind of lets me go with that, and I let him know what he needs to know, at certain periods of time. But yeah,
it's a partnership that works really well. All right. The other thing that you do is as you can tell, and folks that are watching this, they can tell.
We're on TV.
You would be, and you didn't know that until this morning. You thought it was all audio.
Makeup.
So this is why we do a one shot on you, by the way. But you have a personality that is, it's infectious. Let's be honest. It's infectious. So you do a lot of speaking as well around the country. How has that helped? And is that something you'd recommend to business owners?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And again, so the speaking I do is almost all technical speaking. So it's like it's very, very boring.
Why do I not believe that?
No, it is. Like, it's really tough. Like, I've even said, like, when I'm speaking, like, I'm trying to make this interesting, but we just have to talk about numbers and details and stuff like that. So, it's important, one of our core values is industry leaders, right? And to be an industry leader, you can't necessarily just keep pace. You actually have to set pace, in certain elements. And so, being out there and interacting and speaking and, so, I've done a lot with biocontainment, discussions of that, some federal government stuff, some emergency management with respect to healthcare facilities. See, it's getting boring, isn't it? You're like,
yeah, moving on. No, it's good. It's good. And people need to know this. Yeah. But I have to imagine that's attracted some clients to you as well. That's just a natural part where you can leverage your skills.
But I'll be honest, a lot of that is like our obligation to the healthcare community, right? So, education within the healthcare community is paramount. And, just as I said, like there's things that we see that are changing every day. If you're running a hospital and your job is everything from the security to operating the hospital, and there's all sorts of compliance that you can't keep track of it. Also, there's some obligation from firms like us to be out there and helping them to stay in front of those things. Yeah.
As if people haven't already learned enough. And we're going to keep learning, because one of the things I think you bring to the table that is fascinating and every business owner wants to know is, how do you get that sustained growth? You didn't go from 6 employees to over 100 and a nationwide presence without sustained growth. So was there a strategy? What is the strategy? What could you give to a business owner to say, I want that 20, 30, 40% growth every year?
Yeah. So our growth numbers, we don't arbitrarily set them, right? We don't come in and say, for the sake of growth, we're going to be X, Y, Z. We say, here's a market that's good. Here's a client that works for us. Here's people we like to work with. Here's what our staff can handle, which is probably one of the bigger issues right now. And then we arrive at, some number based on that. And then we back into strategy after that. So, if in some years we focus more on, like there's been a couple of years, and this will be one of those years where we're going to internalize a little bit, and because you grow and then you're all your stuff doesn't keep up, your HR policies, your technical, your quality review process. So then you fix that, right? You get that back kind of where it needs to be, and then you're ready and you grow again, and then you got to adjust that, and then you grow again, and then you got to adjust that. So, we're in the phase right now of going, kind of back into some of our documentation policies and stuff like that on the design side, and making sure that those are rock solid, and then retraining our team on those. Yeah.
So let me see if I got this straight. Most companies come out and say, I want a 20% growth. This is going to be our number, and here's how we're going to get there.
Yeah.
It sounds like you guys do that on the flip side. You say,
the flippity flop.
You just flip flopped on me. You go, this is what we're going to do, and the growth number will just follow. Yeah. Is that right?
Yeah, and we, our leadership principal team, they're responsible for certain numbers, right? So, we will ask them what they're comfortable with, and ask them if do they have a strategy for that, and that we don't, it may take us 2 years working on a client to actually start to get, decent volume with a client. So it's a long play type thing. Yeah. And again, the clients we have are just, they're great. And, they're high profile in terms of, national presence, and every facility wants to be a world-class facility. And so you have to support them in that mission. And so just throwing engineers at them doesn't really work, right? You have to throw a team that fits with them, and that team has to, learn the way they do things. And so it's a process.
Yeah. Hey, we're going to take a quick break in the show so that you know about Farmers and Merchants Bank of Ashland, the sponsor of Leadership Lessons from Mayberry. You know, few banks can say they've been around for 139 years, but Farmers and Merchants Bank of Ashland has. Why? Because they are locally owned, locally managed, and they are focused on you. They offer full service business banking, and you're always going to talk to a live person when you give them a call. They're commercial lenders. They are more than happy to share their expertise and to help you navigate any business financing that you may need, including SBA, TIF, or NEDCO financing. Check them out at fmnb.com or give them a call at 402-944-3316. Member FDIC, an equal housing lender. One of your philosophies is you always have to know the why.
Yeah.
And I want you to expand on that a little bit. Are you talking more about your employees? Are you talking about everything? The mission of SES?
Everything. Yeah. Yeah. Like I would not expect anybody that I work with, anybody on my teams to just do something because Eric told me to do it. Yeah, right. I mean, maybe I express that sometimes unintentionally.
You forget the why.
Yeah. But I tell my kids that too. Like, you know, if you're watching the news, which, is what it is. But and somebody says something, you shouldn't just accept it, right? You should do some independent, like, well, why, right? I mean, you should accept the fact that people that, you know, there's a reason they do things. And if the reason isn't good, we really should be asking, you know, do we redefine the reason? So we have a whole process with why are we doing it? Okay, it's a good reason to do it. How are we going to do it? Okay, here's how we're going to do it. So when is it going to be done? Okay, so this is when it's going to be done, and then on the last element is what are the metrics by which we're going to judge if it actually worked. And so we kind of call it a decision accelerator.
Yeah, you could call it the 4 Ws.
Yeah, we
Can I
could
just give you a new term. Yeah, write that down.
Yeah, I'm right. That Director of Operations, Tim Washburn.
But you know, so often that is a fundamental mistake of a business leader or a business owner, isn't it? Not to really explain to the team why. They get in a hurry. So, you know, I would imagine that is something that resonates with a lot of folks. They skip that step, don't they?
I had a great young engineer. We were talking about staffing, and, you know, we've sat in a room and talked about staff. This is a continual issue with, you know, we kind of run a little bit like emergency department, right? Because your projects come in, you can plan some things, you can't plan other things. And, you know, he said, and he's really, really smart engineer. He was like, you know, part of the problem is when we staff, the metrics that we're using to staff is not the way they guide a rocket. Like with a rocket, you can't, and I have to trust him because I know nothing about rockets, but like you can't adjust course by where you have to adjust course by where it's going, right? And so that was the element we were missing on staffing was we weren't having enough data about like the future side of it and where team loading was going and that type of thing. And so implementing that made that a lot better for us. So, you know, that was data that it wasn't as readily available at the time, but we kind of got that figured out now. So.
Yeah, surprise, an engineering firm wanting data. So here's something else that I think you is so unique about you and your leadership style is self-reflection. You know, you really believe in the power of that. Walk me through how that has helped you to be a better business owner and leader of your company.
Yeah, I think you know that's an element that, you know, we have 6 core values and again takes ownership, engaged, self-reflecting, positive, client-focused. Is that 6? But inherent in the personality of an engineer is not self-reflecting, right? I mean, they're very sure of themselves within their arena of expertise. And so, you know, disarming them and yourself and saying, in this interaction, you know, did I do the best I could, right? Did I express that appropriately to the client? Did I listen, you know, to the client? Was it the right solution? You know, was there something I could have done better? And then moving that into your, you know, your next and in your career. I mean, it's a huge thing as a parent. You know, it's a huge thing. There's a lot of do-overs I wish I had, you know, but, you know, Gage was kind of like the test subject and like, oh, sorry.
The oldest always is, isn't it?
A lot rougher on him. And
he's done extremely well, though.
Yeah,
you guys did
great.
well.
He's doing great. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah. Here's something you emailed me, and I thought, man, I've not heard this about an engineering firm. But you wrote client focused. We are service-based industry.
Yeah.
That performs engineering.
Yeah.
And I don't know that. I mean, that really resonated with me because again, I don't think of engineering as being that service-based industry, but you guys do.
Yeah,
is that unique?
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
not to us.
of course not.
I was talking to Jeff Parker one time and Parker Smokehouse.
Great restaurant.
Does he have to pay you now?
Yeah, that's $50. Thank you. So,
and he said, I was asked him a question about barbecue and making small talk, and he's like, I'm just gonna tell you, like, I'm not a barbecue guy that decided to have a restaurant. I'm a restaurant guy that decided to do barbecue. And one of the owners of another business in town had told me the same thing. I know nothing basically about what I do. I know how to run a business. And so, that's what, if you put service first, like, 7 years of waiting tables, you kind of figure out service. And actually one of our other real good marketing principals in our office has a deep, experience in waiting tables. If you put service first and you think about what the client needs and you provide what the client needs, that's a portion of how to provide, what you need to do, keeping in mind that you're still a business, right? You still have to make money. You still have to do those other things. But
you have to be profitable. But here's what I love about you as well. The places where you learn things. I mean, you are not above sitting down and just having a conversation with another business owner who is not in engineering.
Yeah.
And pulling something from Jeff Parker and from another business owner in Ashland. How do you stay open-minded to that? Because again, you pulled these things away and they sound like they were pretty profound to you, the lessons you got from them.
Oh yeah. I feel like you should try to take a lesson in every exchange, right? Like you should try to, even like one thing that hit me, I was watching, what's the show about McDonald's?
With Michael Keaton?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Batman.
The founder.
No,
the founder?
Yeah.
I think Batman did go through the drive-thru.
But I was the whole time I was watching that, I'm like, well, like if he would just drive there and talk to the McDonald brothers, and the McDonald brothers would just be like, okay, we can loosen up a little bit, they all would have been super. I mean, he was super successful in what he did. But so I watched that movie and I came back to the office. I'm like, hey, we got to learn this from this movie, right? So it's just things like that I try to, you need to internalize, like when people say something. Really good. I have HD, so I'm all over the place. But,
I love it. Like, it's good.
A really, really good guy in the industry told me that was the difference in his marriage with his wife, was that she told him all this stuff and he didn't take account of it. And then one day she sat down and she said, you need to internalize this. When I tell you this, it's for a reason. And he said his relationship was awesome after that. So
I love it. Yeah. I love it.
Natalie's probably listening to be like, okay, so what lesson you take from that? Because you're not deploying that.
What lesson I take from you? You get the most out of movies. First, Michael Keaton, Batman. You sent me an email that quoted Conan the Barbarian, and another Arnold Schwarzenegger movie.
Yeah.
So we'll talk about him a little bit later. But, look, I said this to you coming in. You have, again, an infectious personality. People gravitate towards it. And I also imagine that you have to have that balance with your staff, who I'm sure adores working for you guys, and that's how you've grown. But you mentioned, look, there are times you have to have tough conversations, and you really build it on two things: trust and relationships.
Yep.
And again,
and filters.
The business, and filters.
Yeah, filters is huge.
Explain that.
So, I mean, anybody kind of, myself, put yourself in a situation where you get a call from somebody in charge, and they say, "Can we talk?" I mean, what's the first instinct, right? Panic.
Bad. Yeah, that's bad.
So there is months and months and months of groundwork of relationship building and trust, and it's easy to even start and my partner's great at this. He'll be like, we have to have a tough conversation, but first I'd like to know, is this a good time for you to have a tough conversation? Are you in the right frame of mind to have a tough conversation? And it'd be like, well, yeah, I am now. Now that you said that,
laid the groundwork.
But, just making sure you're that open with them. And then another thing is like, you should be more invested. I don't know if you should be, but I am. I'm more invested in the success of the people around me than myself, because I figure if I'm super invested in their success and I get them there, then by default I benefit from that, right? So, so you sit down and you say, before we start this conversation, we got to have some basic, guide rails. And that is, you're a valued person in the organization. You do a great job. You make 100 great decisions a day. I want to make you better. And if we agree on those 4 things, now let's talk about what we have to work on.
Yeah, that door is a lot more open, isn't it?
Yeah, and somebody really young in the industry came back at me one time and they said, you should never be afraid to have a conversation with a person if it's in the best interest of making them better, right? And so if you preface that, then those conversations, which undoubtedly in management, you can't always be Disney dad. You have to,
progressive dad, TV dad, yeah.
You have to have those, and they're tough. They're tough, and you stew about them and stuff like that.
Right. Yeah. But I think the other thing, my guess is that you really excel at, and probably your entire ownership team, is that the person, right? It goes beyond just the X's and O's of what they do in the business, but their family, their kids, the things they love to do on the weekend, and that connection, that personal connection.
That's coach. I mean, that's what I really feel about, interpersonal and coaching is connection, and you can see it, right? You can see people interacting with people that have connection versus that don't. And that, that's probably a really good lesson for people, is like, if your interaction is exchange, and there's not a lot of that, and it doesn't have to be just small talk, right? It could be meaningful discussions about this or that, but that really has to be there. I think one other these that you did, they talked about connection was really good. So
yeah. One of the things you also sent me is you love to compete. You love the grind.
Yeah.
And you're a competitive guy. One of the emails or lines you sent me in the email, again, a quote from Arnold Schwarzenegger, who's one of the great philosophers of these days.
Yeah. But when you do this,
yes,
Austrian accent. Because that's what makes it great. It's like cookies from your mom. That's what makes it great.
I can't, but you can't.
No, I can't do that. No, I'm not going to do that.
But bottom line is, look, you guys do grind as much fun as you have.
Yeah,
you told me, man, the office is fun, but you guys grind and you get after it. And is that what you look for in every employee? And if so, how do you find that in the interview process? Because everyone could say they're competitive. Yeah, right.
I was doing one of the classes at UNO, and I did it the same day that our new football coach Rule took over, and I said, before I start this, I want to reflect on his speech when he became coach, and I said, and they all kind of like, we're UNO, we don't care, we're engineering, stop talking about football. And I'm like, this is going to have nothing to do with football. It's going to have everything to do with emotional intelligence, because if you go back, and I would challenge you, go back and listen to what he said and how he said it, is a very, very, very emotionally intelligent, display for Husker Nation. And I, fundamentally everything he's done since then, you believe it, right? That's kind of the person he is. So that's what we look for when we recruit people. If you listen to people that do podcasts and books on hiring people, they talk about high performer, low performer, high trust, low trust, and you have to have high trust category. So, we look for a high trust category. We look for emotional intelligence. If you can survive engineering school, you're probably smart enough to do, I'm proof of this. You're probably smart enough to do what we do, but, interacting in an emotionally charged room or a politically charged room is probably a little bit harder grab for us. And then, you talked about the grind, but that's what it is. You come in and, you're going to have to put in 20-hour days at times, and that's just the nature of our business.
But that's another advantage that SES has, right? Because, and again, I could be wrong on this, but my perception is so many engineering firms are looking just at that GPA, right, to get you in the door.
Yeah.
But you're looking for that emotional quotient as well.
Yeah. Yeah. If you have a degree, and I mean, the bar isn't that low, but
right. I get what you're saying.
I just
it's just not a one-stop number. It's like the number doesn't necessarily stop on what that GPA is, right? You're looking beyond that.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're asking questions about, what motivates you, what do you do for fun? What kind of culture are you looking for in a firm? What type of thing? That's really more what we're after.
Yeah. And, you know, I told you we're going to bounce around, but just thinking about that, we think about lessons. Don't you think there's a lot of businesses that can learn from that? That so often it's like, if they don't have this, they can't work for us, versus what's the fit? How could we teach them? How could they learn? You know, and we can, you know, maybe they don't have exactly what, you know, that piece that we're looking for, but we can teach them.
Yeah.
Is there a little bit of that?
Yeah, we need both.
Yeah.
Right?
And in engineering, you must.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, we have some really, really, really bright, really technical people. And then we have people that again, case in point, you know, that didn't graduate with those high of honors and GPA, but that are good in on their feet. They're good in a room. They're good at making decisions, that type of thing. And you take the kind of the aggregate of that and put them together, and that's what you got. And even on a team, like when we staff a team, you have to have a really solid technical expert on a team, right? So
yeah. Absolutely. Well, listen, I want to keep going with this, but then we're gonna just pivot a little bit after this next question. But you also sent me something that got me to sit up in my chair. It made me really think about it, and I'm going to read it because I want you to walk us through it. Because you wrote, the illusion of work-life balance versus being happy, following your passion instead of finding something you are really good at and taking personal satisfaction from that. And you, again, quote Mike Rowe of I think Dirty Jobs, right, was the name of his.
One of his, he's got lots of stuff out there.
Yeah. So walk me through what you mean by that. We had a great discussion earlier, but I want them to hear it.
Yeah. So when I started my career, I was really concerned about, you know, am I taking care of all those things in my life that I need to take care of? So am I spending the right amount of time with my family? Am I spending the right amount of time on work? Am I spending a lot of, you know, the right amount of time working out and my personal health? And am I, you know, spending a right amount of time with renewal? And I told you this, but I became more stressed out about making sure that those little circles in my head were the exact same size than I was, am I happy in what I'm doing? So I found personally that you know, being happy was actually the ultimate metric by which I was going to judge, you know, that work-life balance. And as long as the participation that I had in my work life didn't negatively affect my family or, you know, my relationships with people, then that's what it needed to be. And I was very happy doing that. So what I did was, and again, is, you know, the time between 5 p.m. and, you know, 9 p.m. with my, you know, relieving my wife and helping with children and all, because she's full-time also, right?
Yeah.
And you spending that time, that quality time with your family, right, is the most important time. So that's the time that I never really budged on. But, you know, I would go to work at 2 a.m. and work from 2 a.m. through that time, or, you know, go and work at midnight or 5 a.m, whatever. And, and that worked well for me.
Because then you were able to balance the work life a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. The other side of it is like, you know, we need all these occupations, right? And so, you know, you come out of school and you don't really know what you're going to do. You're kind of good at something, so you choose a direction, and people say follow. You know, you have to do something you're passionate about. Well, that's about 20% of jobs, right? Like our wives who are educators, that's something you're probably passionate about, and that's a great way to achieve success in life, is to be a great teacher, because you can leverage, right? All the people you teach can do great things, and you do great things by doing that and everything else.
Well, I think what you're saying is, and what we talked about before was, look, you take what you get. I mean, you make sure that you're happy in what you're doing. Yeah. And you focus in on that versus saying, "Oh my gosh, you know, I have to come in at 2 a.m."
Yeah, I'm back. I got it back. I know.
Okay, yeah. You've picked it up from there.
So the quality with which you do, you become passionate about it, right? Yeah. So you go out there and you're a great accountant, and because you're a great accountant, you're successful, and because you're successful, then you become passionate, and you know the lifestyle and everything that goes with it. So that's that's the upside.
I love it, and that got me to just stop when I read that, because I think that's so important, especially for young professionals to really understand too. You know, when they get in there.
Yeah. And ask people like that. I mean, I think young people don't spend enough time asking people, like, you know, hey, I see a person, like, I want to be Tim Washburn. Right? So
such a low bar.
So do you go in and just sit down with him and say, you know, what steps did you do to become, you know, who you are, or something like that. I think that's missing. You know, a lot of people just don't think that you're going to spend the time to do that, or, whatever.
Yeah. And, I love it. You also had something in here too about advice that you would give to young professionals. That was one of them. But, the 8 to 10 years following graduation has
high school. I should have put
high school graduation.
Yep.
Has exponential impact on the way your life looks. I want you to expand on that.
I had a really good exchange with a student who verbalized to me that they were lacking of motivation to get up and go to class, and they were in engineering. And I said, well, let me just put it to you this way. Like, the amount of effort that you put in this period of time, which is getting through school and then your first 5 years of establishing yourself within the industry after school, is directly proportional to how lazy you can be
later on in life. That is a great payoff.
And I wouldn't advocate for that, but if you put that time in, right, and that's probably the other component of after I got out of school is I took in everything I could take in. I read everything I could go. I went to all the conferences I could go to. I worked with as many different teams in the firm I was at as I could. I took on as much project work as I could to really get great, because you can't skip steps. You got before you go to where you need to go, you need to get really good at the technical side of kind of what you do. And so I tried to accelerate as much as possible through that. And then I didn't choose a path to be lazy later in life, but
you definitely got that kid's attention with that line. Well, I promise you that.
Because I actually got feedback that actually stuck with them. So.
I love it. Listen, you and Natalie, great parents. And by the way, your daughter just the other day worked with the Special Olympics in Ashland at a track meet. She's an amazing young lady helping, Special Olympic athletes, and your kids are doing great things. But one thing you sent to me, and I love your vulnerability because it's something, again, I can relate to as a former business owner and a father, is there were times you wanted to be more patient. There were times you wanted to enjoy more of that time. Yeah. What'd you learn from that?
Well, first, I do want to recognize just the absolute unbelievable impact of Calvin's Legacy Foundation in that event. That is unbelievable. The impact that they've made in the community is just absolutely phenomenal. So that event was great. And I'm glad my daughter, because that's what she's going to go into is special education. So
yes,
it was a good.
And let me just stop here for a second for folks that are watching. You're looking for a good charity. Look up Calvin's Legacy. Yeah. They do some wonderful things. But yeah, I'll let you pick it up from there.
What was the question?
See, I promise you, we were going to be bouncing around. You had said to me, "I wish I would have enjoyed more of that time."
Yeah, I was a impatient husband. I was an impatient. I shouldn't say was. I continue to work on being. But I didn't stop and enjoy. I do remember, like, with all my kids, kind of their lasts in certain things, and how much I just sat there and said, "This is last. I'm gonna analyze it. I'm just gonna enjoy it." And if I would have rewinded and done that a little bit, earlier, I think I would have enjoyed things a little bit more. And, you're things that now aren't a big deal were a huge deal, and stuff like that. So, I think there's a lesson there. And then, the nature of what we do is high stress and that type of thing. So you kind of become a little bit more, used to living in that type of environment. So yeah, I think there's always an opportunity before you to take a step back and say, is this super important? Do I need to express this, or how should I express this? Or
so if there's a piece of advice that you could give to a business owner that maybe is going through this right now, maybe they're in an upstart and they're getting going and they're feeling that sense of urgency and they're balancing everything, what would it be?
Well, my daughter was stressed out about something and I told her, so a couple philosophies that I always had was, I may go out of business, but it's not going to be today. Right. So if you wake up and that's the first thing you say, well, okay, you don't have to worry about going to business that day. Right. So you take that stressor, off your life. Yeah. And then, you go in and you grind, right? You go in and you are competitive. And like, if you don't achieve success for X, Y, or Z, you don't say, hey, we didn't win this job because it was a setup. You say, this is the things that we didn't do right to not win the job. Right. So we're going to get these the next time. Yeah. And you just keep coming back harder and harder and harder every time. Like, that's the...
Yeah. 3 and Out is how we end the show. I'm going to throw you 3
I wasn't
random
prepared for this.
Oh, this is so up your alley. because we're going to be.
I'm going to write the questions down, and then Grace will give us a series of green lights
Grace,
followed by
at an hour.
lights.
Let him know. Here we go. You ready?
Are you going to give me all three, and then I got to answer one at a time?
One at a time.
All right.
Oh, these are tough.
This aligns.
Yeah. So you're a product of the 90s.
Oh, yeah.
Michael Jordan or LeBron? Who's the greatest?
I have to say LeBron, but here's the reason. My son is very emotionally invested in LeBron being the best, so I cannot say anything other than him. But what I fundamentally believe is that this is something that'll never be solved. So people can talk about it for hours and hours and hours. It's like a time filler, right? So that's the real reason we do that, right?
Yeah.
It's like, well, we got nothing else to do today on sports radio, so we're just going to talk about who was better.
Exactly.
Because there's no way
for an hour
until artificial intelligence can recreate, both of those entities and have them go ahead.
Oh, that's coming too. Oh my gosh.
I didn't watch basketball, though. So this is a super uneducated opinion.
Well, your son is going to love you even more for that. Arnold Schwarzenegger, you love to quote him.
I love, yes.
Masterful actor.
I think it's thespian. I think that is the terminology that's supposed to be used.
What is his best movie of all time?
It's Pumping Iron.
Pumping Iron.
Yeah,
what I
documentary,
missed.
the documentary about his last Olympia before he went back and redid the Olympia. And again,
so that probably was pretty good.
It is Conan Barbarian's second. But so the thing about Arnold is that until the recent instant, well, it's not recent, it's like 10 years ago, but until that lack of judgment and character and all the things.
Yes.
He was one of the greatest displays of discipline that you could ever see. Like he said, I'm going to move to America. I'm going to win the Olympia. I'm going to be a famous bodybuilder, and I'm going to marry a Kennedy. Right. And he came in and he did those things, and he became governor, and all of those things were a product of incredible discipline and vision and focus. And, my instinct was to win, to eliminate any and all competition, to destroy my enemy, and to move on without any hesitation at all. That's his quote, not Conan.
Right.
But those things are I think there's a huge lesson there.
He has accomplished a ton. No, he honestly has. He is someone that has overcome and has accomplished. All right, here we go. You ready? Last one.
All right.
Loose meat sandwiches. We got to talk food. Or do you go with a burger? If you only had a choice, what is it?
It would be a burger.
It would.
Yeah.
No, were you old enough to remember Frosted Treat?
Well, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I think the recipe still exists.
Yeah, it does.
It's like the Coke vault. There's a vault in Ashland.
What'd you put on your loose meat? What'd you have on?
Everything. Yeah.
Oh, you had
mustard
you put
pickles.
the onions on too?
Oh, for sure.
Oh, yeah. Oh, man, miss it.
Tasty.
It was indeed. Listen, you have been amazing. I knew it would be great.
I really appreciate this opportunity.
Oh, listen, but listen. I got as we go out. Last thing, as you know, I do business coaching, so I always want to know a mentor, great coach. We'll leave it on that. Who was whether it be business, athletics. I know you mentioned Tommy Anderson. Let's go with one other. Who mentored you in your life that you are very grateful for?
Probably Mark Bond.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was pretty influential in my life. He got me my first internship and coached me along the way, and taught me about bringing something of value every time you go to an exchange. You show up with something of value, and just a lot of lessons like that. Plus, he's an incredible listener. Probably you're a very good listener. You're very intent. You look at people like, I'm really.
Do I scrunch up a little bit? Yeah.
And I know it's tough for you because you're probably thinking of something else, but Mark is an incredible listener. He's genuinely interested and engaged and asks questions, and so super
great
human
person.
being.
Yeah. Well, listen, you should be proud of what you've accomplished, and it's amazing what you've done with SES and 100 employees, nationwide presence. The little guy from Ashland, Nebraska that would get on the roof, bother his babysitter. Look at what you've done. But congrats on your success.
I appreciate that. It's a good time. Thank you.